And the shadow in the hospital. Anna always believed hospitals were places of healing, not of dread. That belief began to crack on her very first week of the night shift. St. Mary's Hospital was a squat, aging building in a quiet town. The white paint on the walls had long faded to a dull cream, and at night the fluorescent lights flickered with a low, constant hum. Most of the patients slept through the dark hours, leaving only the sound of ventilators and distant beeps. The quiet was supposed to be peaceful. Instead, it made her skin crawl. It was around 2 a.m. on her fourth shift when she noticed it. Room 214. An old man named Howard was asleep, his chest rising and falling slowly. Anna had just finished checking his vitals when she saw a figure at the foot of his bed. It was tall, human-shaped, and impossibly black, darker than the room's shadows, as though it absorbed the light. There were no features, no clothes, no face, just an outline. Anna froze. "Sir, can I help you?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It simply stood there, angled toward Howard's body. She blinked once, twice, and it was gone. She told herself it had been a trick of the light, her tired eyes playing games with her mind. But 10 minutes later, Howard's heart monitor flatlined. Over the next few nights, Anna tried to forget it. She worked her rounds, delivered meds, checked vitals, and smiled at the few patients awake enough to notice her. But then it happened again. This time it was room 308, a middle-aged woman recovering from pneumonia. The shadow was there, exactly as before, at the foot of her bed. Anna's heart pounded in her ears. She stepped forward, and again gone. Not a footstep, not a breath of air disturbed. The woman died of sudden cardiac arrest before morning. The pattern emerged quickly. Every time Anna saw the shadow, the patient died within hours. She tried to talk to the other nurses. "Do you ever see strange things here? Like someone in the room who shouldn't be there?" Most shrugged her off. One avoided her eyes entirely. Finally, she cornered Marjorie, an older nurse who'd been at St. Mary's for decades. Marjorie's lips pressed into a thin line. "Don't speak to it. Don't try to touch it. Just do your work and pretend you didn't see anything." Anna frowned. "What is it?" Marjorie shook her head. "We call it the Watcher. If you acknowledge it, it notices you." And with that, she walked away. On the seventh night, the hospital was quieter than usual. The winter wind rattled the windows, and the halls felt even emptier than normal. Anna had just stepped into room 312 when she saw it again. But this time, the patient wasn't old or sick beyond hope. It was Daniel, a 22-year-old who had survived a brutal car crash 2 nights earlier. His condition was stable. He was expected to recover. Yet there the shadow stood tall, still, and featureless. "No," Anna whispered before she could stop herself. She stepped forward, heart hammering. Not him. Not tonight. The shadow tilted its head not much, just enough to suggest it had heard her. Then, it was gone. Seconds later, Daniel's monitors exploded into shrill beeps. His heart rate plummeted. Code blue. Anna shouted, lunging for the crash cart. The team rushed in, performing CPR, but nothing worked. Daniel was gone. Anna could still feel the moment the shadow had tilted its head. It hadn't just been watching Daniel, it had been watching her. From that point on, the air in the hospital felt different, heavier. When Anna walked the halls, she caught glimpses of movement in the corners of her eyes by the elevator, in the reflection of a window, in the dim stretch of hallway between wings. Always still, always staring. She started to dream about it. In her dreams, the shadow stood at the foot of her own bed, closer each night. The last dream ended with it leaning over her, featureless face inches from hers. She woke up gasping, heart slamming against her ribs. 2 weeks into her new job, Anna nearly quit, but something kept her there. Maybe stubbornness, maybe the idea that she could stop whatever this thing was. She began reading about death, omens, folklore, and supernatural sightings in hospitals. Most cultures had a figure, sometimes human, sometimes not, that appeared just before death. None of them had advice for how to make it go away. Her final shift began like any other. She made her rounds, updated charts, and tried to keep her mind focused. But just after 3 a.m., she noticed something strange. The halls were too quiet. No footsteps from other nurses, no distant chatter from the nurses' station. Even the humming of the fluorescent lights seemed muted. She turned the corner and froze. The shadow was there, not in a patient's room, not by a bed. It stood directly at the nurses' station, in front of her desk, the place she always sat to update charts. For the first time, She realized it was taller than she had thought, easily 7 feet. Its head was tilted slightly, like before, but now she could feel an attention radiating from it, a weight pressing against her chest. Anna's legs felt locked. "What do you want?" she whispered. The shadow didn't answer. It didn't need to, because in that moment, Anna knew. It had finished with the patience. Now, it was here for her. She stumbled backward, breaking into a run. Her shoes squeaked on the linoleum. She didn't stop until she burst through the double doors, into the cold night air of the hospital's back lot. Her breath formed quick, pale clouds in the freezing air. When she finally dared to glance back through the glass doors, the shadow was gone. Anna didn't wait for her shift to end. She never returned to St. Mary's, but sometimes, late at night, when she's trying to sleep, she swears she sees it again. Not at the foot of a hospital bed, but standing in the corner of her bedroom, just watching. Story 2. The screams beneath the floor. Mark knew the rent was suspiciously low, but the landlord's smile was warm, and the basement apartment was bigger than anything he could afford in the city. "It's a little old," the landlord, Mr. Cray, admitted as he handed over the keys, "but solid, quiet, too. You'll sleep well down here." Mark wanted to believe him. After months of couch hopping and sharing cramped rooms with strangers, a place of his own felt like a fresh start. At first, it was fine. The single window barely let in light, but it was clean, the plumbing worked, and the building was in a quiet neighborhood, quiet except for the first night. It was around 3 a.m. when Mark woke to a faint, high-pitched sound. At first he thought it was a cat, but as he sat up, the sound sharpened into something else. Crying, faint, muffled, but undeniably human. He got out of bed and pressed his ear to the wall. Nothing. Then he crouched lower, close to the cold floorboards. And there it was, again, whimpers. Then a stifled scream, coming from beneath him. His heart thudded. "Maybe it's the pipes," he muttered. Old buildings made strange noises. Right. He told himself that, and went back to bed. Over the next week, it happened again, always around 3 a.m., always muffled, always beneath the floor. Sometimes it was crying, sometimes angry shouting, sometimes the desperate thud of fists hitting something solid. Mark tried to brush it off, but the sounds were getting harder to ignore. It didn't help that Mr. Cray avoided his questions. "Old place," the landlord said with a shrug when Mark mentioned the noises. "You're hearing the building settle." Then he quickly changed the subject. One night, Mark stayed up late, determined to catch the sound on his phone. At exactly 3:04 a.m., it came, a faint, hoarse voice begging for help. Mark's stomach dropped. This wasn't pipes. This wasn't settling. It was someone. The next morning, he searched the apartment for an access point, trapdoors, vents, anything. Beneath the threadbare rug in the center of the room, he found a loose floorboard. When he pried it up, the smell hit him first, a rancid mix of rot and something metallic. Below was darkness. His phone's flashlight revealed a narrow crawl space. Dust floated in the stale air. At first it seemed empty, just dirt and wood beams. But when he shone the light further in, his throat tightened. There were bones, human bones. Some bleached with age, others still clinging to scraps of skin. Torn bits of fabric hung from them like the remnants of old clothes. Mark staggered back, slamming the board shut. His hands shook as he dialed the police. But before he could press call, the whimpering began again, this time louder, and directly under him. The floor shivered beneath his feet. He grabbed his keys and bolted, pounding on the upstairs neighbor's door. An elderly woman peeked out, her face pale. "You opened it, didn't you?" she whispered. Mark froze. "Opened what?" "The floor. That's where he keeps them. Once you hear them, you never stop." She shut the door before he could ask more. That night, Mark didn't sleep. He sat on his bed, staring at the spot where the rug lay flat again, hiding the loose board. The crying came early at 2:48 a.m., and this time it wasn't muffled. The voice was clear, frantic. "Let me out. Please. He's coming." Mark's pulse raced. He wanted to help, but the smell from earlier still clung to his nostrils, and there had been no movement down there, just bones. Still, against his better judgment, he pried the board up again. The crawl space was darker than before. The light from his phone seemed to sink into it instead of illuminating it. The smell was worse, thick and cloying. Then, something moved. At the far end, where the dirt met shadow, a figure shifted, a pale, skeletal hand dragging itself forward. Its skin hung in loose strips, and where its eyes should have been were hollow pits. It opened its mouth in a soundless scream until Mark heard the whisper, not with his ears, but in his head, "Trade places with me." Mark stumbled back, dropping the phone into the crawl space. The light spun wildly across bone piles before going out with a soft thud. In the dark, the whisper grew sharper. "Trade places." The floor under his feet sagged like something was pushing up from below. Splinters cracked. He ran for the door, but the handle wouldn't turn. Behind him, the crawl space scraped louder, something forcing its way upward. The board snapped in half. A pale arm shot out, fingers like claws, grabbing his ankle. The touch was ice cold. Mark screamed and kicked free, finally wrenching the door open. He didn't stop running until he was out in the street. The night air burned in his lungs. When he looked back, his apartment window was dark. But just for a second, he thought he saw movement, a pale face pressed to the glass, watching him. The police came the next day. They found nothing in the crawl space but dirt and old animal bones. No human remains. No sign of anyone living or dead down there. The officers exchanged a look that made Mark feel like they thought he'd made it all up. Mr. Cray refunded his rent in cash, no questions asked, and didn't try to stop him from leaving. Mark never went back, but sometimes, at night, the faint sound of crying drifts up through the floor of his new apartment. It's always around 3 a.m., and each time, it's a little louder. Story 3. The vanishing hitchhiker. Ray had been driving trucks for almost 15 years, and he swore he'd seen it. All blizzards, drunks, wandering the highway, even a bear once, but nothing prepared him for the girl in white. It was just past midnight on a lonely stretch of Highway 17. The kind of place where your headlights seem to get swallowed whole by the dark. The radio had long since gone to static. Ray was on his third cup of gas station coffee when he saw her. She stood on the shoulder, waving slowly. Pale skin, long dark hair, white dress that fluttered in the breeze. She couldn't have been more than 20. Ray slowed instinctively. Nobody should be out here, no lights for miles, no cars in sight. He pulled onto the gravel shoulder and rolled down the passenger side window. "You lost, miss." She nodded but didn't speak. Her eyes were wide and glassy. "You need a ride?" Ray asked. A moment's pause. Then she opened the door and climbed in. Up close, she looked even more out of place. Her dress was old-fashioned, the kind you'd see in black and white photographs. She smelled faintly of damp earth, like she'd been caught in the rain. "Where you headed?" Ray asked. "Home," she said softly, and gave him an address in a small town about 40 minutes away. They drove in silence for a while. Ray kept glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. "You from around here?" He tried again. She nodded once. "Yes, born here." The air inside the cab felt colder now, enough for Ray to see his breath in the faint glow of the dashboard. Half an hour later, the lights of the small town appeared ahead. The address she'd given led to an old two-story house at the end of a quiet street. The porch light was on. Ray pulled to the curb. "This the place?" She turned to him for the first time. Her eyes seemed wrong, too dark, too deep. "Thank you," she said, "for bringing me home." She reached for the door handle, and Ray blinked. In that split second, she was gone. The passenger seat was empty, the door still shut. He swore under his breath, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. After a moment, he climbed out and walked up to the house. An elderly couple answered the door. "Sorry to bother you," Ray began. "I think I just picked up your daughter. She gave me this address, but she disappeared from my truck." The woman's face went pale. The man stepped forward. "You must be mistaken," he said slowly. "Our daughter died 30 years ago. Car accident. Right on Highway 17. Ray's stomach dropped. White dress, long dark hair. The woman's voice broke. That was what she wore the night she died. Ray backed away, mumbling apologies. His mind raced as he returned to his truck. When he climbed into the cab, something caught his eye. The passenger seat belt was still buckled. He didn't remember her buckling it. Shaken, he drove to a truck stop on the edge of town. He parked under a street lamp and decided to check the dashcam footage. He rewound to the moment he'd stopped for her. The road was empty. No figure, no girl. The passenger door never opened, but halfway through the clip, the seatbelt clicked shut on its own. Ray's hands tightened on the phone until his knuckles ached. He deleted the footage. He tried to forget it, chalking it up to exhaustion and too much coffee. But 2 weeks later, hauling freight along the same route, he saw her again. Same stretch of highway, same slow wave, same white dress. Ray's foot hovered over the brake butt. He pressed the accelerator instead. His headlights swept over her as he passed. For the briefest moment, her head turned to follow him, her mouth curling into the faintest smile. And then she was gone. At night, he couldn't sleep in the cab. Every sound outside made him flinch. Around 3 a.m., the passenger seatbelt clicked into place, even though the seat was empty. Ray didn't take Highway 17 again. But sometimes, on lonely roads far from any town, he swears he catches a glimpse of white in the rearview mirror just for a second, before the darkness swallows it. Story for the eyes in the woods. The forest was alive with the sounds of nightmare crickets, the occasional snap of a twig, the distant rush of a stream. Jake tossed another log onto the campfire, sending sparks spiraling into the dark. Told you this was the perfect spot, he said, grinning at Laura, Ben, and Mia. They were deep in the mountains, far from cell service, roads, and people. Exactly what they wanted, a weekend of hiking, beer, and nothing but trees. By midnight, the fire burned low. The four friends lounged in camping chairs, trading ghost stories and laughing too loud. It was Ben who noticed it first. Hey, he said, pointing toward the tree line. What's that? 2 red dots glimmered between the branches, reflecting the dying firelight. They were too high off the ground to be an animal like a raccoon, but too far apart for a deer. Probably just eye shine from some critter, Jake said. Coyotes, maybe. Coyotes don't have eyes like that, Mia murmured. The dots vanished, swallowed by the dark. Everyone laughed it off and went to their tents. The next night, after a day of hiking, they saw the eyes again. This time, closer. The red glow was unmistakable, unblinking. Jake shone his flashlight toward them, but the beam lit only leaves and empty air. When he lowered it, the eyes had moved 10 feet to the left, peering from behind another tree. Ben swore under his breath. That's not normal. Relax, Jake said, though his voice lacked conviction. It's just curious. Still, they built the fire higher that night. The third night was different. They'd been sitting around the fire for less than an hour when the eyes appeared not in the distance, but just beyond the ring of light. They were higher than before, at least 8 feet off the ground, and there was no sound, not a single twig snapping underfoot. Laura's voice was a whisper. Jake, it's watching us. The eyes blinked, but not like human eyes. The movement was slow, deliberate, and out of sync, one closing a heartbeat after the other. When Jake aimed his flashlight again, the eyes vanished. This time, they didn't reappear. They went to bed uneasy. At 2 a.m., Mia's scream split the night. Jake burst from his tent to find her standing outside, pale and shaking. Something was breathing next to me, she gasped. Inside my tent, I thought it was one of you, but it was cold. Jake checked her tent empty, no footprints in the soft dirt except hers. Still, no one slept after that. The next morning, Ben decided to hike to the car and leave early. I'm not spending another night out here, he said. The others agreed to pack after breakfast, but when noon came, Ben hadn't returned. They followed his trail for almost a mile before finding his backpack in the middle of the path. The fabric was shredded, and the straps were slick with something dark. Claw marks scored the dirt around it, long, deep gouges that didn't match any animal they knew. Mia started crying. We have to go, now. But when they turned back toward camp, the trail behind them was gaunt. The forest looked different and said unfamiliar. Panic set in as the day faded. They stumbled through the trees, searching for any sign of their tents, the stream, anything familiar. But the woods seemed to twist and close in around them. By nightfall, they were hopelessly lost. And then the eyes returned. There were more of them now, 4 pairs, glowing deep red, spread in a wide circle. No sound, no smell, just that unblinking gaze. Jake raised his flashlight again. The beam hit something this time pale, bark-like skin stretched over an impossibly thin frame. It wasn't an animal, wasn't human, but something between. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at a strange angle, as if studying them. The moment the light touched it, the thing moved, blurring into the dark like a shadow pulled by invisible strings. The friends backed into each other, the fire of their earlier bravado completely gone. "What do we do?" Laura whispered. Jake's voice shook. "We keep moving. Don't stop." They walked all night, the eyes shadowing them at a distance. Every so often, one would vanish from view only to reappear ahead of them. Just before dawn, they stumbled into a clearing. In the center was Ben's body. His chest was caved in, his eyes wide, mouth frozen mid-scream. The forest was silent. Then, behind them, a twig snapped. Jake turned slowly. The creature stood there, no longer hiding, its eyes glowing even in the growing daylight. It was taller than he remembered, its mouth stretching into something that might have been a smile. In the blink of an eye, it was gone. So were the rest of the eyes. By the time rescuers found them 3 days later, Jake, Laura, and Mia were half-starved and nearly incoherent. The official report called Ben's death an animal attack, but none of them spoke about the eyes. Not to the police, not to their families, because they knew the truth. Sometimes, in the dead of night, they still see 2 red dots outside their windows, watching, waiting. The phone that called itself. Clara's phone rang at 1:13 a.m. The sound was jarring in the silence of her small apartment. She groggily reached for the device on her nightstand and froze when she saw the caller ID. Me, her own number. Half asleep, she assumed it was a glitch. She answered anyway. "Hello, static." Just a low crackling hiss. She was about to hang up when a faint voice emerged, her own voice. "Clara," it whispered, her chest tightened. "Who is this?" she asked. The call cut off. She tried to laugh it off the next morning. Maybe it had been a spoofed call. Maybe her phone company screwed something up. She blocked her own number, just in case. That night, at exactly 1:13 a.m., the phone rang again. Same caller ID, me. Her thumb hovered over the reject button, but curiosity won. "Hello." More static. "Then, you're wearing the blue shirt again." Clara froze. She was wearing a blue sleep shirt, but she was alone in her apartment. She hung up, tossed the phone on the bed, and stayed awake until sunrise. Over the next week, the calls kept coming. Always at 1:13 a.m., always from herself. The voice grew bolder. "Don't leave the kitchen light on tonight. There's someone outside your window. You forgot to lock the door." Clara stopped answering, but the voicemails were worse. On one, she heard herself screaming. On another, she sobbed, begging someone to stop. She took the phone to the police. The officer listened politely, then told her it was likely a scam using voice cloning technology. "But how would they know what I'm doing in real time?" she asked. He didn't have an answer. By the 10th night, she was sleeping with the lights on. She kept her phone in a drawer, but at 1:13 a.m., it still rang. She didn't answer until a new message popped up. "Answer, or I'll come inside." Her stomach knotted. She picked up. The voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I'm right outside." A second later, her front door handle rattled. Clara grabbed a kitchen knife and called 911 on her landline. The police arrived within minutes. No one was outside. The door was locked. They told her to change her number and get some rest. She did change her number. Bought a new SIM card, even a new phone. For 2 nights, she slept without interruption. On the 3rd night, the phone rang me, her new number. This time, she decided to record the call. She put it on speaker, hit the record button on her old phone, and answered. The voice was clearer than ever. "You can't stop me. I'm already here." She asked, "What do you want?" "To see you." She hung up and played the recording back. The sound made her blood run cold because in the background, faint, but distinct, she could hear her own breathing, not through the phone, from across the room. She left her apartment the next morning, booking a hotel across town. No one knew where she went. She turned her phone off entirely. But at 1:13 a.m., the hotel room phone rang. She picked it up with shaking hands. Static. Then her voice. "Why did you leave? I thought we were finally together." Clara slammed the receiver down. She didn't sleep at all that night. The next day, she packed her things and drove to her sister's house 3 hours away. Her sister didn't believe the whole story, but agreed to let her stay. We'll get you help, she said. That night, Clara slept in the guest room. No phone nearby, no electronics at all. At exactly 1:13 a.m., the room's darkness seemed to thicken. Clara woke to the faint sound of breathing at the foot of the bed. She couldn't move. The voice came not from a phone, but from right beside her ear. "See, I told you I'd get in." Her sister found the bed empty in the morning. The sheets were cold, the window open. Clara's phone sat on the nightstand, screen cracked, displaying a single missed call. Me, the call time, 1:13 a.m.